I started thinking about why it is that we feel the need to discuss and rediscuss the same issues but in different ways, and the location of art and how it is placed, and what the representation of the art can or cannot be based on the location and other surrounding factors. It brought me back to Thomas Metzinger, a German philosopher who is similar to Lacan in his notion of not being able to see oneself through oneself. He suggests that we create a representation of the self, but it's not really our true self. It is an illusion of the self. In relation to art, there is a sense of transparency. We view the object without really seeing the object. We become blinded by the illusion of the object. It's as though we see through it and into the space that it occupies, which reestablishes the work as something other than itself. Whether it is because we know it's in this specific place for a specific reason, we decide that it's something other than itself. This idea of the self being an illusion, I find really fascinating, and I can relate to it from the perspective that you can never really see yourself and understand yourself from the position of being yourself. But I think that this is why we sometimes make things and talk about things. It's this never-ending drive to understand our own relationship to reality that makes us continue to create and reassess these environments that we place, these objects that we make or don't make. For example, when you look at objects we encounter in everyday life, most people recognize them as nothing more than what they are. Every day we pass by something that could be considered art. It takes someone to take it and place it in a specific way, in a specific location for it to be called or considered art. It is when it's put into a new context we are challenged to see the object in a new way, re-examine it in this way that we normally wouldn't based on the environment that it's in. When it's put into a gallery, museum, or an artist space, it becomes something more. It's something that we should recognize with a significant meaning. Or one would hope that it would have some sort of significant meaning. It seems like by trying so hard to define and redefine art spaces, we're trying to understand how something may or may not function within these art spaces. Whether it's intentional or not, it's somehow still a convention, either if it's a new or used thought, because there's this understanding of an artist participating in the play of artistic space. And paradoxically, when the artist or the curator tries to remove the art as far outside of the art world as possible, the art is still in some way in the same place where it started from in the first place. Or is it more like in this middle space because the artist put it there and it's knowingly been put there in this manner by the artist? And in this way, this is what I mean by it's already a convention, sort of like chasing your tail. And by doing this, does it make the object that much more interesting, or does it put it right back to its original context that it came from? So I'm wondering, what's the real reason for this? Is there a real reason? Is it just this never-ending drive to understand our own relationship to reality that causes us to do this? Or is it about commodifying an object? I read Antagonism and Relational Aesthetics by Claire Bishop, and there's a particular paragraph that I found interesting that I'll read to you. Art venues continue to reconceptualize the white cube model of displaying contemporary art as a studio or experimental laboratory. Direct reaction to the type of art produced in the 1990s, work that is open-ended, interactive, and resistant to closure, often appearing to be work in progress rather than a completed object. Such work seems to derive from a creative misreading of post-structuralist theory rather than the interpretations of work of art being open to continual reassessment. The work of art itself is argued to be in perpetual flux. There are many problems with this idea, not least of which is the difficulty of discerning a work whose identity is willfully unstable. Another problem is the ease with which the laboratory becomes marketable as a space of leisure and entertainment. Metaphors like laboratory, construction site, and art factory are used to differentiate themselves from bureaucracy, encumbered collection-based museums. Their dedicated project spaces create a buzz of creativity and the aura of being at the vanguard of contemporary production. One could argue that in this context, project-based works in progress and artists in residence begin to dovetail with an experience economy, the marketing strategy that seeks to replace goods and services with scripted and staged personal experiences. Yet what the viewer is supposed to garner from such an experience of creativity, which is essentially institutionalized studio activity, is often unclear. This is a show by Oliver Herring called Areas for Action, and it's him basically doing performances, improvisation, sculptures, and collaborative work with gallery guests. And basically, I went to the show and I was able to see what was going on, and I took a lot of photos of some of the things that were going on, and it was a great show. And I was very curious to find out like how the gallery was going to be able to sell what it was that Oliver Herring was doing. And then I realized that, the photographs that he was taking, he was going to be selling, and that was the way that the gallery was going to be making money. But it was definitely one of the more interesting shows that I've seen for a while. I was pretty excited about spending time there. Looking around in the gallery, I noticed that he had his own desk and workspace set up in the corner. It was more of like a studio environment than a gallery space, which was interesting in the sense that it was transformed in a way that normally you wouldn't think a gallery would be set up. So, and there was something going on all the time. And then there's Carlos Morales' work at Yvonne Lambert's going on until November 20th. Basically, I'm wondering, is there anything out there that can't be sold? The idea would be sold alongside the roller that attaches to the wall and then the template. And the art dealer would have the piece installed based on the template, and you own the idea and the template and the roller, and anytime that you want the piece installed or reinstalled in a different location, it can be done. Say if you wanted to have it installed in a different gallery, as long as you own the piece, you could do that too. Going back to Thomas Metzinger, he suggests that the conscious self has a model of itself, and the self model is just a virtual model. Much like the self, objects are these things that we put significant meaning to based on what we use them for. And this relationship begins with the objects in its stagnant point of interpretation. It's when we take these things and we insert them somewhere new, and in its new space, they become a part of this new reality we place them into. In this way, we're controlling its reality or illusion of reality. Each time an object is moved or placed into a new context, it takes on a new life. Much like the idea of the self, the object doesn't focus on itself anymore. It's looking for the reality behind the representation of reality, whatever that may be.